Hello, everyone. Welcome into Southeastern 14. This is SEC football game day here on Saturday morning, October 7th. It is a loaded slate of SEC games, and we're really going to be focusing on three main games today, one at each different time of the day. You've got the early kick with LSU, Missouri that we'll be diving into. Of course, the CBS 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central game of Alabama and Texas A&M. And then, of course, the night game between Kentucky and Georgia in Athens. It's going to be a loaded day of football. Of course, we've got Arkansas, Ole Miss that we'll touch on a little bit. Vandy and Florida play. And then you have Mississippi State going up against Western Michigan. We aren't even going to get into that one. So don't wait around for that one. But guys, if you do like being here on the channel, you like the content that we pump out, daily SEC coverage, make sure to hit caroline.smith at southeastern14.com to find out how you can partner with us and advertise with us here on the channel. But guys, without further ado, let's get into these matchups. I'm super excited. Let's start with that early kick. It started out at 6.5, as you can see on the graphic here. I think it's trended down a little bit. You can get it some places at 4.5 favorite for LSU on the road in Como. We know, guys, that this is a matchup that, hey, it's all about kind of emotions here. We know how talented of a team that LSU is, but they have just not been very good defensively. And let's get into the defensive matchup here right off the bat. Inside the numbers, for Tigers versus Tigers, a stuff rate where your defense stops someone at or behind the line of scrimmage. Missouri has been much more effective at that, stuffing opponents 26.4% of the time compared to LSU 16.9% of the time. Havoc rate, that's a tackle for a loss of any kind, a sack, that's a interception, a fumble. So any kind of havoc that you are creating, a pass breakup, all of that is factored into havoc rate, and they're about the same on havoc rate. Now, points per opportunity, that's when an opponent crosses your 40-yard line. What is their points that they're coming away with when they enter past your 40-yard line into your own territory? And neither one of these teams have been very good at that. They haven't limited people's scoring opportunities. Over 4 points, guys, means that teams are scoring touchdowns on you, so that's not great there. Now, line yards, Missouri does have a much better advantage there. That means how good of a push is the offensive line getting against your defensive line and how many yards are they responsible for. 2.2 yards is pretty dang good there for Missouri, just kind of average there for LSU. And the opponent's predicted points added, so the result of every single play on average, how many points is it adding against you, or how many points is it adding for the other team? 0.132 is really good for Missouri. 0.315, not very good there for LSU. So you can see there that LSU has had their struggles defensively when you go inside the matchup there. We know that in terms of LSU, the pass defense has been awful, but then last week, Ole Miss ran all over them. So my question here is, obviously, can LSU stop Brady Cook and Luther Burden? But also, too, guys, I'm curious to see, Schrader and Pete at running back, they combined as a 1-2 punch. They're as high up there as anybody in the SEC in rushing yards, been very efficient. I want to see, okay, how can they run the football? Because I think, and I know Missouri likes to go tempo as well. They like to have an upbeat offense. Eli Drinkwitz is he's not afraid to get into a shootout with somebody, but I think their best defense could be their offense if they're able to utilize the new clock rules and take a little bit of time, keep Jaden Daniels off the field. So, but guys, offensively, and we're going to look at those numbers here in just a second. Offensively, it has been there's not been anybody that's really rivaled LSU this year. Maybe Ole Miss, of course, in that matchup at times, but even consistently, LSU has just been awesome offensively. Let's look at those numbers. Explosive passes as it passes over 20 yards, you can see that LSU has 33 of those compared to Missouri's 22. Explosive runs, 35, guys. That's a ton. When you talk about percentage-wise of this, LSU in terms of explosive runs, I mean, they're really up there in terms of the amount of explosive runs percentage wise, and then Missouri 15 explosive runs on the year. Third down conversion, that's a ridiculous number, 56.7% compared to Missouri's 39.3. So Missouri's going to have to be better on third down in this game. Extend drives, turnover percentage, both of them doing a good job of taking care of the football. But look at the average predicted points added on a per play basis. I mean, the results of LSU, they are going to put up points, and each play is getting them a half point closer almost to scoring. I mean, so it is crazy the results they're getting offensively. So, Missouri's going to have to limit those explosive plays for LSU. They have a experienced defense. Hasn't necessarily lived up to what they thought maybe on the back end with those safeties. Need to have a really good game out of Enos Rakestraw and Chris Abrams-Drain over there at corners, and they're going to have to create some havoc and try to make sure they're disciplined in their pass rush against Jaden Daniels. Don't go past him so he doesn't have rush lanes to get out, things like that. So I'm intrigued to see that matchup, because that is the 12 o'clock noon kick. So excited to watch that game. 5-0 Missouri. They've got everything on the line. So who handles the pressure better? The LSU, as they're back against the wall, they can't afford another SEC loss, or they'll be totally eliminated from contention for the West. And then when you talk about Missouri, they're trying to put themselves right in that conversation. All the talk is about Georgia and Kentucky, is they're facing off undefeated tonight in Athens, and we'll talk about that game here in just a little while. But Missouri's trying to say, hey, we belong in that conversation as well. So that was the 12 o'clock kick today. And then you've got Alabama minus 2.5 at Texas A&M. The Crimson Tide is, a team that has been trying to find an identity and has rounded into form as of late offensively with Jalen Milroe. More QB run, more. I think they've simplified some of the reads. 1-2, if it's not there, go. He's allowed his receivers he's put the ball up and allowed his receivers to go make some plays in the last couple of games. And defensively, it's a very good team. And then Texas A&M, when Connor Wigman went down, a lot of people were worried about what that would mean for the longevity and the goals of this Texas A&M team. But Max Johnson has stepped up and played beautifully, and he's a gamer. He goes in there, he's able to extend plays, create plays with his legs. He's not like, Jalen Milroe on the other side, but he can run plenty effective enough, and he delivers the ball with confidence and has really been playing well with Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher running that offense over there for the Aggies. Jimbo Fisher's teams always get up for Alabama, so it's going to be exciting to see this matchup. And let's go inside the numbers here. I want to look at let's first look at Alabama versus Texas A&M on the defensive side of things. You see here the stuff rate, where they're holding teams at or behind the line of scrimmage. The Aggies have a higher stuff rate there, 21.7%, so not quite as high as Missouri's, but they're still stuffing people pretty regularly. Havoc rate, Texas A&M number one in the country, guys, when it comes to tackles for loss, sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles, all this kind of stuff, pass breakups, everything that's Havoc. 28.5% of defensive snaps they are forcing some havoc, guys. So that is a very high rate. Alabama creeping up near 20% themselves, so not bad there. Points per opportunities. Once people get across the 40-yard line of Texas A&M, they're typically not having much success, averaging less than a field goal, well less than a field goal, guys, on those scoring opportunities. Alabama just over a field goal, so that's about average right there. But they have played really well in terms of both these team line yards, what the offensive line is responsible for. So they're less than 3 yards. So the old adage, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Well, neither one of these teams are allowing that, and both are very, very good in terms of points predicted added per play in terms of Texas A&M 0.021, Alabama 0.07. So guys, that is, less than 1/10 of a point, well less than 1/10 of a point on a per play basis. So they are really getting it done defensively. Both of these teams are. I'm excited to see, how these teams kind of go after each other's weaknesses a little bit. I think maybe Texas A&M is a little bit vulnerable in the secondary time. So can Alabama create big plays? But then conversely, that Texas A&M defensive line gets to go up against an offensive line for Alabama that has struggled at times this year. So I'm excited to see that. And then, of course, when you're talking about Alabama defensively, I think really that linebacking unit, if Deontay Lawson, it's rumored that he could be coming back, but if he's not 100%, and then some of those guys are a little bit younger, are they able to match some guys up, do some things across the middle that could put them in trouble a little bit? Because I think that Alabama secondary is really, really good. So you got to try to find matchups where you can. And we know that pass rush for Alabama is very good as well. Now let's look at the matchups in terms of offensively. Alabama and Texas A&M, you look at 19 explosive passes this year and 25 explosive runs for Alabama. A&M pretty balanced, 21 explosive passes, 22 explosive runs on the year. Both are very good on third down, converting 46.3% of the time. Alabama right on the nose at 50% of the time for Texas A&M. Turnover percentage, A&M's been a little loose with the football, 2.04% of the time they turn it over. That's not the greatest in the world. And then you're talking about Alabama, 1.28. That's pretty good. They're taking care of the football for the most part. Alabama, their average points predicted added really struggled because of that South Florida game. And then Texas A&M, that's above the league average 2.99 or 0.299 on PPA there. They're above average right there around Georgia and some of the others. So that is the matchup offensively, guys. I think this is going to come down to, can Max Johnson and that Texas A&M offensive line hold up on third downs? I think Alabama's pass rush is going to be it's going to be tough to stop. And I think, trusting those guys in the middle of Texas A&M's offensive line, Foster, Naboo, Robinson, those are the one I'm looking at. I feel pretty good about Zune and Basantis there on the tackles, even going up against Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. I want to see in the middle there, Foster, Robinson, those guys going up against Jaheim Otis, Tim Keenan, Tim Smith there in the middle, guys who aren't talked about as much for Texas, for Alabama's defense. But I'm excited to watch these matchups within the matchups a little bit. And can Jalen Milroe prevent from turning the ball over? He's had a couple critical ones, even though they haven't turned the ball over as much as Texas A&M. Whichever quarterback takes better care of the football, that's probably going to be the one that comes away. And this is at Texas A&M, mind you, so that 12th man could be a factor. Now let's talk about Kentucky and Georgia, guys. I posted a video on Twitter because, my mind, how the narrative has changed in a week, guys. You talk about Kentucky was the one that their fans felt a little slighted and things like that, because everybody was talking about Florida coming into that big home game last week, because Florida had ran the ball all over Tennessee, had looked really impressive in an SEC game, had a better quote unquote resume than Kentucky. Kentucky had struggled with inferior competition, wasn't playing up to their standard, things like that. And then all of a sudden a big home game comes around and Kentucky puts it all together and just explodes and beats Florida soundly, even though a lot of the media and everything like that, not me, mind you, I picked Kentucky to win that game, was talking about Florida and how Florida was going to be able to run the ball in Kentucky and stop the run and things like that. Well, fast forward a week later, and the Kentucky faithful are kind of using all that same logic and trying to apply it to this matchup versus Georgia. And mind you, Georgia has won 22 straight ball games. I don't care in what fashion. They've won 22 straight ball games, 2 straight national championships. And that's, they're still ranked number 1 in the country with losing 26 guys to the NFL in the last 2 years. Carson Beck is playing much better than Devin Leary at this point in the year. So I think there's a lot to look at. A battle of SEC East undefeateds. Georgia 14.5 point favorite. Over under, I think is now down to 47.5. But I think, guys, when you look at this matchup, you're looking at, okay, where are the strengths of each team? Where are the weaknesses of each team? And you're talking about Georgia when it comes to offenses turn around and hand the ball off to a running back, they're holding them to 3.1 yards per carry. When a quarterback runs it, it's upwards of 5 yards per carry, like 5.3 yards per carry. Kentucky needs a running threat at quarterback because they're going to run the ball on Georgia, because that's what Auburn and UAB, the teams that had some success run the ball against Georgia, it was that quarterback run that and the threat of quarterback run that hurt things. Kentucky does not have that. I don't think you're going to be able to just turn around and hand the ball off to Ray Davis 25 times and think that's how you're going to have your success to beat Georgia. Devin Leary's going to have to play really good on the road and play much better quality of football than he has played to this point in the year. So let's look at the numbers here. Let's start defensively. Both of these teams play a good, strong brand of defense. Stuff rate for Georgia is higher at 22.7%. Havoc rate is almost identical. Both are pretty good in terms of holding teams to right around a field goal on scoring opportunities. When they get inside of their 40-yard line, they hold teams to right around a field goal each. The line yards are almost exactly the same, but Georgia's predicted point added on a per-play basis, they have been pretty elite at not allowing opponents to just have success on a play-to-play basis. Negative 0.009. Kentucky's very good as well, just at 1/100th of a point there, almost 2/100ths of a point there on a per-play basis. So really excited to see these two physical defenses. Kirby Smart has talked all week about how physical this matchup is with Kentucky, and the players at Georgia always say they're the most sore, the most banged up after the Kentucky game. But guys, it's a deal where Kentucky has not scored, more than 17 points on a Georgia team since 2016. So it is going to be very, very interesting to see if Devin Leary can go on the road, a night environment. Mind you, Georgia has not hosted a night game, an SEC night game, since 2021, early 2021, when JT Daniels was still the starting quarterback for that football team, and Stetson Bennett had not taken over as a starter yet. Since then, we know Georgia's only lost one game during that span in the SEC championship to Alabama, and they've played and won 2 national championships. Think about this. In that time period, Georgia has had 6 college football playoff or SEC championship game experiences since they've had an SEC home night game. Crazy. The fan base is going to be revved up for that one. Let's look at the offenses. You can see Georgia's been more explosive in the pass game, 25 explosive passes on the year. Kentucky more explosive in the run game, 28 explosive runs to Georgia's 19. Georgia's much better on third down, converting 54% of the time. Carson Beck was 8 of 13 against Auburn on third down. That is a ridiculous rate right there. Both of them could be a little bit better at not turning the football over. Kentucky's had way more problems turning it over, and especially Devin Leary, and he threw 2 picks on the road at Vanderbilt. If he does that at Georgia, it's not going to bode well for the Wildcats. And then the average predicted points added, Georgia is 3rd in the league behind LSU and Ole Miss. Kentucky is not far behind. So, guys, there's a lot of similarities in these teams, 2 physical ball clubs, but overall, I think this matchup is just not one that bodes well for Kentucky on the road. I think this is at Lexington. I'd give them a much better chance of that environment, but a night game, defending back-to-back national championships, all everybody is talking about is Kentucky kind of going into this matchup and how dominant they were against Florida. You best believe that Kirby Smart has been talking about that all week. I think Georgia wins this one convincingly, and I just think it's a bad matchup for Kentucky. But listen, it doesn't mean I'm not high on Kentucky. I picked them to go 10-2 before the season. I picked them to be undefeated to this point, but lose to Georgia and then lose one more game to Alabama. But other than that, that's the only loss I have Kentucky going on the year. So I think Kentucky's a good football team. This just is not a good matchup for them, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Kentucky could go in there and play great, but I think they're going to run into a buzzsaw with that crowd and everything in Athens. Guys, the other matchups that we do have, Vanderbilt going on the road to Florida. I think Florida is just going to be able to run the football the way that Billy Napier wants to run the football in this game, because Vanderbilt is atrocious at stopping the run. I think Florida gets a get-right game there before they have to go on the road to a big contest in South Carolina. And I say big because I think when you look next week, Florida and South Carolina, I think you could be looking at a hot seat type game there for Napier and also for Beamer. Whoever loses that one, the fan base is going to get really rowdy on them. And then speaking of hot seat, we know that Sam Pittman has been having people call for a change over there at Arkansas. The Arkansas faithful, Ole Miss 11.5-point favorite. When I made this graphic, over under 63.5, I just don't know how that Arkansas defense is going to stop Ole Miss. I think Jackson Dart, Quinshot Junkins, Trey Harris, Caden Prescorn, Zachary Franklin all have it rolling right now, and I think they're going to be able to roll up a lot of points over there, more than Arkansas can match in Oxford. And then, of course, Mississippi State has Western Michigan this week, guys. So, guys, that is our college football game day prep here. I hope you are revved up, ready to go for a big weekend. Make sure that you are getting things set up. Get you some chomps, some good tailgating stuff. But chomps, if you love, whether it's turkey, beef, venison, they are a meat snack, guys, that you can get quickly, and they're delicious. They have tons of flavor. The jalapeno beef is my favorite. You can get you a 15% discount in the description below. So check that out. As always, contact caroline.smith at southeastern14.com if you want to partner with us or find out how you can partner with us. And guys, we will see you next time right here on Southeastern 14. Enjoy your game day. It's going to be a fun one. And I'm excited to react to it. Chris and Blake will have the reaction live here. So turn on notifications, like, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time to talk more SEC football right here on Southeastern 14.